Those Just Stop Oil protesters were at it again yesterday, and a couple have been arrested. One is called Samuel Johnson, which amused me. They stormed the rugby at Twickers, and of course we saw those. And I was thinking about it on the way here. I think the reason why this gained such traction is it does make extraordinary pictures. Clouds of orange paint or powder at Chelsea Garden Show, or clouds of paint on the green baize, the hallowed green baize of the Crucible during the snooker final, and on the pitch, the hallowed turf of Twickenham. Of course, you know, you can see this is irresistible catnip to news photographers. This means that their protests literally go viral and make their way onto the front pages. At the same time as we've seen these protesters arrested at Twickers, we've also heard news that Keir Starmer is basically agreeing to their main demand, which is to stop and ban any further drilling of oil and gas in the North Sea. I think this is a real moment. I think this shows that their methods have worked. Do you agree? 0345 6060 973. Obviously, what Keir Starmer is saying, the pause on oil and gas. No, not the pause. The decision to stop further drilling in the North Sea. So it's not a pause, it's a final curtain for oil and gas in the North Sea, apart from the 2 oil fields that have already been signed off. A whole other conversation about that is whether this is going to jeopardise our energy security and drive our bills up. I want to park that and talk about protest. Does what's happened over the course of this weekend show that Just Stop Oil is right and Just Stop Oil has worked? 0345 6060 973. Have they won you over? They may have lost the dressing room at Twickers, but have they won you over? I'm going to talk about my opinion on that, but let's just have a quick listen to the moment Just Stop Oil activists invaded the rugby match at Twickenham yesterday.
Stop the game, Luke! Stop the game!
And you can see why the game has to be stopped.
From Surrey Square. 20 metres from touch. I know, but it's going to be, no one's going to be happy with
So the protest is continuing.
Let the boys get treatment. It'll be a scrum where Owen kicked it from.
So you heard the crowd, the rugby fans booing what was going on, and I think the match was interrupted for 5 minutes. Well, not a great disturbance in the great scheme of things, is it? 5 minutes, or a flower show being scattered with orange paint, given what the aim of Just Stop Oil is. I mean, contrast what they want to do, which is to save the world, with 5 minutes of a rugby match or a bit of disruption at the Chelsea Flower Show, where you have those, Chelsea matrons wearing floral midi dresses being horrified at the disruption. I thought they should have been shouting, "Just topsoil," to the protesters, but maybe that joke will go over the heads of my audience. I mean, but my question to you is, I can see why everybody finds them terribly annoying. It is terribly annoying to see people who are convinced of their own righteousness and their own cause, in which I also believe, doing something which looks like a stunt, a silly, attention-seeking, newspaper front page grabbing stunt. I can see why the public are irritated, but has Labour picked its side, and is it siding, do you think, with Just Stop Oil? Now it has committed, and it said one of its most important missions as it goes into the election and possibly government is to stop oil and gas in the North Sea. So on its website, which I had a quick look at, Just Stop Oil says you've got to pick a side and you should join with us, and the media have to pick a side as well. I'm trying to find the exact words they use. In fact, we don't need to, because Emma Brown is going to join us, Just Stop Oil spokesperson. Emma, thank you for coming on to talk about what's happened at Twickenham and what Keir Starmer has announced. Remind us of what you do say on your website, because I couldn't find the bit. Saying that if you don't join Just Stop Oil, whether you approve of your methods, you have to approve of your aims. Is that right?
Well, thank you for having me on,
Pleasure.
Rachel. Well, it's not just a matter of belief, it's a matter of science, and it's a matter of common sense. Like, we can see out of our own window that things are changing. Gardeners can see that things are changing. We can see the news events around the world. We know that we can't continue expanding oil and gas, and it's a basic first step. And also, it's not a matter of perspective about whether or not we're getting people on side, because we've seen in an independent YouGov poll that came out on the 2nd of May that nearly 60%, 58% of the UK public support the demand. And this is why we do things like this. It's in order to get onto programs like this and to be able to make the arguments that are not being made enough, and our politicians are not being challenged enough on the decisions they're making that are affecting the lives of UK citizens. So I think that's why we're seeing Keir Starmer, who, let's be honest, is only going to go with what is in public opinion because he wants to win the election. He's made this pledge, so that shows that there's broad public support for our demand, and I think that shows that, that what we're doing is effective.
Yes, I agree. I agree, but I would like to see a direct correlative between what you've done and Labour's decision. Is there any evidence that you have that you can point to say, and we went to see Keir Starmer and he agreed that our one aim, which is all over our website, which is no new oil and gas drilling in the North Sea, was really important, and therefore he was going to commit to end it. I mean, can you claim that, Emma Brown?
Well, Rachel Johnson, that it's not as easy as that. Social change and political change is not as easy as we do an action and a politician says, because you've done that action, we've committed to this. What we've seen, and there's another YouGov poll that tracks this, is that as our actions became, because we started off back in April last year doing oil terminal disruption, directly targeting oil and gas companies and infrastructure, targeting profits. And that didn't get any media coverage. What we saw in October was a steady understanding of our demand, and also a radical flank effect where more people were joining other environmental groups like Friends of the Earth. So we've seen that this has a direct effect. And then we've seen that Labour and all the other political parties, actually apart from the Conservatives, support the demand. But what is a crucially important point is that we cannot wait for another government to come in, because the projects that are currently in the pipeline looking to be approved, projects such as the Rosebank oil field, which would produce more emissions than the lowest 28 income countries in the world. We can't let these go ahead. Otherwise, basically, we're going to...
OK, well, Labour, as you know, hasn't committed to cancel Rosebank, and the other one, which begins with C, which I can't find immediately in my notes. What's it called? Cambo. So Labour's not cancelling those. So do you think this is only a partial success then when it comes to your main demand? Would you like to see Labour commit to cancelling those two new sites as well? Obviously you would, but I mean, are you going to carry on then for making your case so Rosebank and Cambo are going to be cancelled?
I think that the interesting question is that you're kind of accepting that what we're doing is having an effect.
I think I am.
But also I would also ask you though, it's not like it's our demand because we are the only ones that want to stop.
No, as you said, the public is behind you.
Don't want millions of people to suffer and die. You know, it's also your cause, Rachel. Do you not want to see Labour plan to roll back? Or in fact, do you not want to see the Conservative government, rather than putting us in prison, just commit to the demand, and then we can all just get on with the job of transitioning our economy in a way that benefits people? It's a gross injustice. And we are up against the richest industry in the world. And unfortunately, the Conservative Party has accepted £3.5 million in donations from fossil fuel lobbyists and climate change denial think tanks. So that just shows what we're up against, Rachel. Like, I worked in a library. I was a care worker. This kind of disruption is the way that we can have effect. We don't have the money to do billion advertising campaigns like the fossil fuel industry. This is the way that ordinary people make change. So that's why we want more people to join us, because I know that I don't like getting locked up. I don't want to go to prison, but I do want my nieces to have a future. And I want to have kids. You know what I mean? Like, this is just, it's just
of course,
what we all need to do.
we are on the same page. We all want our kids to have a future. But you started our conversation by saying that you thought Keir was only following the polling when it came to this commitment. So you're essentially saying that the Labour leader is only chasing eco votes. Do you think that's fair? And would you like to see Labour go a lot further than it is?
I think it would be naive to think that politicians didn't create manifestos and policies trying to get voters to vote for them. That's just kind of basic politics.
But you're questioning the motives, you see, by saying they are following the polling.
But I'm saying that, to be honest, that is not what's important. What's important is to locate political power in ordinary people, and the power that we have is to influence and pressure our political decision makers, because they're supposed to represent our interests and our views, and that is what campaigning is for. So I don't think it matters why, you know, whether it's because they had a blinding flash of inspiration, because they went to a forest and just fell in love with nature. That doesn't matter, because they looked at their eyes of their kid and felt bad. I don't care what it is, as long as they make the right decision, and that is to end new fossil fuel licensing.
Emma, what if it leaves this country very vulnerable to energy shortages, if we are 100% reliant on renewables and an electricity grid fed by renewables, very, very vulnerable to some sort of cyber attack which could basically knock out the whole country? What's your plan B when you don't have any oil and gas in the mix?
I'm really glad that you asked this question, Rachel, because I've been doing interviews for a year and the conversation has at least moved to this point of how we practically do it. Obviously, there's wind power, there's solar power, but we also have tidal power. That's not something that runs out. We're an island nation with a massive amount of potential in renewable energy. And the simple fact is that relying on oil and gas makes us very vulnerable to extreme fluctuations in market prices. But it also makes us vulnerable to the fact that our fresh water supplies run out, sea levels rise, and salt water infiltrates our fresh water supplies, our crops fail. And that is a lot more, we simply cannot carry on like this. Otherwise, there's no chance.
Emma, thank you very much for coming on. And, well, I suppose I should be almost congratulating Just Stop Oil if indeed Keir Starmer did use, or was he influenced by their protest tactics when he came to this conclusion that his government wouldn't issue any more drilling licences in the North Sea. So my question to you is, do you think that Just Stop Oil's tactics are working, or is it putting you off? 0345 60 60 973. You're listening to Rachel Johnson on LBC. The time is 7:18.
This is LBC.